Hey everyone, and welcome back to What's Your Favorite Scary Story? So before we start with some of the stories, I do want to have a little bit of housekeeping first. So, the first thing I want to say is thank you to everyone who has been telling me to feel better. I do now. The eye is better, so that's the first good thing. Number two, thank you so much to Kaylin and John for being voice actors in this episode. I love you guys. You're the best. You did an amazing job. And number three, thank you to Kevin for suggesting one of the stories, which will be the first story that we're going to start right now. I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky for having a brain where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom likely far surpasses mine, considering his confined to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course they did at first. Charlie has been back home several times, each shorter in duration than the last. Every time without fail, it all starts again. The neighborhood cats with gouged out eyes showing up in his toy chest. My dad's razors found dropped on the baby slide in the park across the street. Mom's vitamins replaced by bits of dishwasher tablets. My parents are hesitant now, using last chances sparingly. They say his disorder make him charming, makes it easy for him to fake normalcy, and to trick the doctors who care for him into thinking he is ready for rehabilitation. That I will just have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he is back. I really like that story. I've seen it before, but I've just never read it because it always just reminds me of Charlie Bit My Finger. And I was like, oh, this probably isn't going to be a good story. But once Kevin suggested it to me, I actually read it, and it's a really good horror story. That last line is so amazing. But will the next story top that one? You can never be too careful. Are any of you parents? If you are, I'm sure you will understand where I'm coming from when I say that the playground is my favorite place to be. It's my time to think, really, as the kiddos burn off all the built-up energy from the day. Some parents might have a nanny who takes their kid to the park for them, and I think that's just lazy. If you don't have time for your children, you probably shouldn't have them. Others would kill for that time. I know I would, which is why I'm always here. Rachel is about 4 years old, and she seems to really enjoy the slides. She gets so excited when she arrives, running to the biggest one first, pigtails soaring behind her as she goes. What a fun age. I should really look into getting a small one for the playroom. Her brother Robbie is close to 6, and he spends most of his time on the swings. I remember really enjoying the swings myself as a child, going higher and higher before jumping off. Closest thing to flying a child can get, I suppose. Today I decided to bring a book with me while they played. Not that I'd actually read it though, you can never be too careful. Just a few months ago, a child was taken from a playground down the street. His mother was far too busy on her phone. She didn't see him happily skip away with someone who had the time and attention he needed. Book in hand, I watched Rachel and Robbie play a game of tag. Oh, how they love to run. I turned a page, not having read a single line, as a woman sat down next to me. I looked over at her, giving a shy smile, when I noticed she was watching Rachel a little too intently. The hair on the back of my neck stood. A sickening feeling began to form in the deepest parts of my stomach, as adrenaline coursed through my veins. I set my book down to my right as I scanned the rest of the playground for more children. I spotted 2 more who appeared to be around 7 or 9. Were their parents here too? Were they protected? I looked at the other benches. Empty. Those kids were alone. When my eyes shifted back to the woman, she was staring right at me. My heart began to race. She saw me shift awkwardly and decided to break the silence.
Which one is yours?
She asked sweetly. I ignored her. Fortunately, she took the hint and swiftly moved to another bench. I released the breath I had been holding, and as I picked my book back up, I smiled. I swear I'm not a rude person. I just don't know the polite way to tell someone. I haven't decided yet. I really like this story. It had such a crazy twist, and it leads you on this uncomfortable path for quite a little bit once it does give that little twist, and just ends it on such a great note. I mean, not a great note. You know what I mean. It's a horror story. I'm going to say great note, and it's going to be the most worst thing you ever heard in your life. But I think it ends on a great note. But I do want to say there's only 3 stories this episode because the stories are pretty long, this one. So let's get into our last story. It's a normal life. I live a normal, boring life. I wake up at 7 a.m. every morning, take a shower, get ready, leave for work around 7:45 a.m., clock in at 8 a.m., leave work around 5 p.m., and unlock the door at my house at 5:15 p.m. That is my day. Every week of every month of every year for the past 8 years. I have no pets or friends. Nothing exciting ever happens to me. Around 1:30 a.m., I awoke to hear the back door to my house open very gently. I knew someone was breaking in, so I casually and quietly pushed aside the junk on my bed and stood up. I made sure to carefully step over the piles of stuff I had thrown around my room to avoid making any noise and headed for my bedroom closet. That's where I stood and wait for the burglar to make his entrance. It was pitch black, and I could tell the burglar didn't have a flashlight since I could hear him tripping over stuff and bumping into furniture. He finally made it to my room. I held my breath and tried so hard not to make even the slightest sound. The burglar managed to step over the trash on the floor and walked right up to my bed. I could hear him pull a knife from his pocket and flip it open. The burglar whispered while hovering over my bed.
"Hey, buddy, I'm gonna stick you like a pig unless you get out of that bed and give me everything you have of value."
No response.
"I warned you,"
said the burglar in an extremely aggressive voice. He wasn't messing around. He drove that knife of his right into the belly of the person lying in the bed, but I could tell by the noise he made that he knew something was wrong. That's when I couldn't hold my laughter anymore, which scared the crap out of him. "I think you're gonna have to try a lot harder than that to get a corpse to talk, Mr. Burglar," I shouted at the man as he recoiled in shock and horror. Falling back into my nightstand, he quickly scrambled to try and get to his feet and tripped over the other body lying on the floor. He was screaming so loud, and I didn't want the neighbors to wake up thinking something weird or illegal was going on over here in my house. In the burglar's panicked haste to get out of my house, he dropped his knife, which I promptly picked up. He made it to the back door and crumpled lifelessly to the floor when I drove his knife deep into his neck, severing his spine. How annoying. Now I must worry about another pile of junk on the floor. Better get back to bed though. My normal boring life continues at 7 a.m. Good night. I really appreciated when it told its little twist, how it carried on. A little bit kind of similar to You Can Never Be Too Careful, but both 2 completely different stories with different outcomes. And honestly, I think today's episode has the best stories that I've read. So, I think I'm going to rank the stories. You Can Never Be Too Careful. I Hate When Charlie is Leaving. And third, but definitely not least, I Live a Normal Life. So, that's going to be it for this episode of Scary Stories. If you have any scary story suggestions, leave them down in the comments. Or, if you have me on any social media or anything, you can hit me up and send me a story. But let's flash forward to the next review.